Now may the Spirit of truth breathe in this place and fill our hearts and minds with the truth of God. May we hear you speaking to us now, O God. The psalmist sings, O Lord our God, how wonderful is your name in all the earth. Who is this wonderful, awesome, majestic God, whom the ancients called Lord, Adonai, Yahweh, I am, whom Jesus called Abba, Father? Who is this God, and who are we, created in the image of this God? Who is God, and who are we in relationship to God? Psalm 8 gives expression to this wondering, and today I want to reflect with you on Psalm 8 by reading a story. That's all. Just going to read a story and see how it speaks to this psalm. It goes like this. Once there was a king who fell off his throne. He was the most powerful of kings, for he had dominion over the sun, the moon, and the stars. High on his throne, he would command the sun to come up each morning and the moon to rise every night. Naturally, he had quite an elevated opinion of himself. I am only a little lower than God, he would say. It was just before sunrise one morning when he fell. Was it a careless accident? Was he pushed? Either way, it was a long way down from his throne. He landed hard and lay unconscious for days. When he awoke, he discovered with a shock that the sun, moon, and stars had risen and set every day and night, even without his command. Dominion is no longer mine, cried the king. There must be a ruler greater than me on this earth. And he set out to search for the person who now commanded the sun, moon, and stars. He travelled across land and sea, visiting kingdoms, until eventually he came to a magnificent palace made of glass and steel. In its central courtyard, he found an enormous telescope, and to one side he saw a girl seated at a computer console, deeply engrossed in calculations of some sort. He said to her, I am a great king who once had dominion over the sun, the moon, and the stars. I seek the ruler who now commands the moon to rise and the sun to set. Hearing this, the child laughed. Then she began to describe the expanding universe, the infinite scope of the space-time continuum, and the physical laws that govern the motion of heavenly bodies. She said to him, I know the stars, and no one has dominion over them, least of all a human being. Human beings are like a speck of dust in the infinity of space and time. The king was amazed by this. For all these years I thought that the sun, moon, and stars obeyed me because I was the most powerful person in all the world. Now I realise they obeyed me despite the fact that I was one of the most humble creatures on earth. No wonder they stopped listening to me and started rising for someone else. I clearly had much too high an estimation of myself. And so it dawned on the king that he had been looking for the wrong kind of person. He began to search not for the most powerful ruler on the earth, but for the most humble, lowly, and inconsequential person of all. For he reasoned that if God was going to give heavenly dominion to such an insignificant creature as a human being, then surely God would go all the way. For many years the king trudged through the lands of the earth, meeting the poor, the downtrodden and the lowly. There were more of them than he expected, but none of them commanded the sun, moon and stars to rise. He became deeply dispirited. One day, in a filthy shack on the edge of a busy city, he met a bent-over old woman. The king said to her, "I am a great king who once had dominion over the sun, the moon and the stars. But I have learnt that I am a lowly and insignificant human being. I ask you, you who have lived your life in lowliness, who now rules the spheres?" The old woman replied, "Foolish king, no one has dominion over the sun, moon and stars, least of all the lowliest human being. If this were so, how heartless and hateful God would be. For what is it to command the sun to rise when its light only shows poverty and degradation? If God were to offer me dominion over the sun, moon and stars, I would say, first, give me the power to end poverty. Let me bring peace with justice on God's earth, and then I will say to the sun, rise." The king was moved by the old woman's words and thought, "For all those years I commanded the sun, moon and stars without giving any thought to the state of the rest of humanity. No wonder I lost my dominion. Clearly the one who now controls the sun, moon and stars must be the greatest peacemaker of all. For only one who brings harmony amidst human suffering could command the harmonious movement of the spheres." The king went in search of this peaceful ruler. He went to parliaments and marketplaces. He spoke to religious leaders and revolutionaries, peace envoys and politicians. He met many people who lived their lives for justice and peace. But the sun, moon and stars obeyed none of them. Finally, in despair, the king gave up his search. With eyes cast down, he turned to make his way back to his palace, there to mourn the loss of his power in solitude. Above his hanging head, the sun climbed slowly to its height. Suddenly, the king felt the earth beneath his feet start to shake. He looked up and watched in horror as the light of the midday sun began to fade, draining away until nothing was left but darkness and emptiness. Then the atmosphere was rent by a violent ripping sound, as if the fabric of creation itself was being torn. 3 days passed. 3 days passed unmarked by the movement of the spheres. The king staggered around, lost in anguish and shadow. Darkness alone seemed to have dominion. Then, coming from the distance out of the darkness, he heard the sound of singing. As it grew around him, the beauty of it swelled his soul, and he felt in his heart, even before he saw with his eyes, the smouldering dark orange warmth of the new light dawning in the sky. Slowly he looked around. He was in a forest garden. At his feet ran a stream of pure, fresh water. On the opposite bank, on the soft green grass, men, women and children were gathered singing, sharing a meal, breaking bread together in the gentle light. At once the king realised how hungry he was. He cried out to them, "Please answer me. I am a king who once had dominion over the sun, the moon and the stars. I have learnt of my insignificance and of my blindness to the suffering of humanity. I have seen the power of darkness and felt the hunger for light. And now the sun is rising again. Please tell me, who is commanding it?" They replied, "Come. Come, join our circle. Eat with us." The king stepped into the stream. He passed through the water and joined the gathering. Looking around, it seemed to him that there were as many different people in their circle as stars in the sky, and they welcomed him. They ate together, and then they joined hands and danced. The motion of their dance carried them in and out between the trees with harmonious grace. Animals bounded joyfully alongside them. Birds sang to accompany their dance. They swung down to touch the earth and reached up to embrace the heavens. And as they danced, the sun passed across the sky, the stars came out, and the moon began to rise. And in the midst of the dance, the king wept. He wept tears of joy and fulfillment. He wept as he saw that the sun, the moon, and the stars moved with the circle of humanity in the dance of creation. And they sang, "O Lord our God, how wonderful is your name in all the earth." Amen.